Hi, I'm Maya. And the day my sister stole my wedding venue, she looked me in the eyes and said, "You could never afford it anyway." I didn't cry. I didn't beg. But what she didn't know was that for 3 years, I'd been making payments the venue manager had never mentioned to her. And when he handed me the ownership papers in front of everyone, her champagne glass shattered on the marble floor she thought she owned. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I used to think planning a wedding would feel magical, like every decision would shimmer with possibility and joy. But sitting alone at my kitchen table, surrounded by Pinterest boards and half-finished invitation samples, I just felt hollow. The fluorescent light above me buzzed with a persistent hum that matched the anxiety in my chest. It wasn't about money, though God knows teaching 6th grade science didn't exactly make me wealthy. It was something deeper, a gnawing doubt that had taken root the moment my sister Vanessa had asked to help with the planning. My fiancé Connor had called earlier from his business trip. Just landed in Chicago. The client meeting got pushed to tomorrow. Miss you. His voice was warm, reliable, the steady center I'd built my life around for the past 4 years. I'd meant to tell him about the venue payment schedule, how I'd finally paid off the last installment yesterday. It was our dream location, Willowcrest Gardens, with its stone pathways and glass pavilion nestled among century-old oak trees. But he'd sounded tired, and I decided it could wait until he got home. The spring air drifted through the open window, carrying the scent of fresh rain and new beginnings. April in Portland was always a gamble, sunshine 1 minute, downpour the next, but today the sky held steady, clear and promising. I poured myself another cup of tea and returned to addressing envelopes, my handwriting becoming increasingly cramped as I worked through my mother's extensive list of second cousins and business associates. My phone vibrated against the table. A text from my cousin Jade, "Have you seen this?" followed by a link. I clicked it, expecting a wedding blog or maybe a dress recommendation. Instead, I found myself staring at a professional website. Vanessa and Parker, Forever begins at Willowcrest. The date, July 15th, my date. The venue, my venue. And the hosts, my parents. My hand froze midair, tea forgotten. I blinked hard, thinking maybe exhaustion was playing tricks on my eyes. But the website remained unchanged, mocking me with its elegant script and floating animations of white roses, the exact flowers I'd chosen 6 months ago. I scrolled through the site, each image feeling like a physical blow. There was Vanessa in a flowing white gown, Parker beside her, both laughing beneath the pavilion arches. The pavilion I'd spent 3 years saving for, making monthly payments while working extra tutoring shifts to afford it. For 5 full minutes, I couldn't move. My chest tightened as if someone had wrapped a belt around my ribs and was slowly, methodically tightening it. I tried calling Vanessa, then my mother, then my father. No one answered. Finally, as the sun began to set outside my window, casting long shadows across my now meaningless planning notes, my phone rang. "Mom," I answered, my voice surprisingly steady. "Maya, honey." Her voice was light, casual, as if this were any ordinary Thursday. "I was just about to call you." "What's going on?" I asked. "Why is Vanessa using my wedding venue? My date?" A pause, then a sigh. "Oh, sweetie. We didn't think you'd mind so much. You know how Parker's family is, they wanted something elevated. And with your teaching salary, we thought you might be relieved. The garden pavilion was getting to be quite extravagant for your budget." "I've been paying for it," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "For 3 years. The final payment went through yesterday." Another pause. "Well, that's very responsible of you. But Vanessa and Parker already sent out save the dates. Their engagement photos were featured in Portland style last week. It just makes more sense this way." "Makes more sense?" I repeated, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. "Yes, dear. Parker's family has connections. This wedding will be an important networking event for your father. Besides, you and Connor could use something simpler. Maybe that little community center by the lake? It would be charming." The suggestion hung in the air like something rotten. I ended the call. Without responding, my fingers trembling slightly as I set down the phone. By sunset, I found myself parked outside my parents' colonial-style home in West Hills, watching the warm glow of their dining room windows. Through the glass, I could see them, my family, gathered around the table. My father gesturing animatedly, my mother nodding, and Vanessa, golden-haired and perfect, sitting exactly where I always sat at family dinners. I walked up the familiar stone path, noticing how the garden lights had been recently replaced, brighter, more expensive. My mother had always been meticulous about appearances. I rang the doorbell, the chime echoing inside. Vanessa opened the door, champagne flute in hand, wearing a cream silk blouse that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her smile faltered for just a moment before recovering. Maya. What a surprise. We were just discussing the menu options. She stepped aside, gesturing me in with the casual confidence of someone who'd never been told no. My parents looked up as I entered the dining room. The table was covered with sample menus, fabric swatches, and flower arrangements, all in white and gold, not the soft blues and lavenders I'd chosen months ago. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Darling, my father said, standing halfway before settling back into his chair. Join us. Your mother found the most extraordinary caterer. Small plates concept, very avant-garde. I remained standing, my car keys still clutched in my hand. I want to understand what's happening, I said. That's my venue. My date. I've been making payments for 3 years. My mother set down her wine glass with deliberate care. Maya, be reasonable. Vanessa and Parker need to get married before his promotion to senior partner. July is the only time that works with his schedule. And my schedule doesn't matter? Of course it matters, Vanessa interjected, her voice honeyed with fake concern. But honestly, Maya, Willowcrest is really out of your league. The deposits alone are more than your quarterly salary. We're doing you a favor. A favor, I repeated, the word hollow. My father cleared his throat. Financially, it makes sense. Parker's family is covering most expenses. It's practical. Practical, I echoed, feeling like a broken record. I paid the final installment yesterday. It's mine. Vanessa exchanged a glance with my mother, a look I recognized from childhood, the silent communication that always preceded me being sidelined. About that, she said. We spoke with the venue manager. He agreed to transfer the reservation. Since we're keeping it in the family. Your payments were credited toward our enhancements. The ice sculpture alone, you took my payments? My voice cracked. Borrowed, my mother corrected. Consider it your contribution to your sister's happiness. Connor will understand, he's always been so flexible. The last word hung in the air like an accusation. In my parents' world, flexible meant without ambition, without standing. Connor's work as an environmental scientist never impressed them the way Parker's law career did. I looked around the dining room, at the family photos where Vanessa always stood center frame, at the display cabinet showcasing her dance trophies and academic awards, at my parents' expectant faces waiting for me to concede as I always had. Something shifted inside me. Not anger, exactly. Something quieter but stronger, like a door being closed and locked for the first time. I need to go, I said simply. Maya, my father began, his tone the one he used for difficult clients. Don't be dramatic. We're family. We're just being practical. I walked toward the door, my movements mechanical. As I reached for the handle, Vanessa called after me. The deposit was non-refundable anyway. You really should thank me. I didn't respond. Outside, the night air felt cleaner somehow. I sat in my car for long minutes, watching the golden light of my childhood home, feeling strangely distant from it. Then I started the engine and drove away, leaving behind the suffocating weight of their expectations. At home, I found Connor's shirt draped over the bedroom chair where he'd left it days ago. I held it close, breathing in the faint scent of his cologne, and finally allowed myself to cry. Not loud, heaving sobs, but quiet tears that seemed to come from somewhere ancient inside me. Later, I opened my laptop and stared at the wedding planning spreadsheet I'd maintained for months. Every detail carefully calculated, every expense accounted for. Beside it sat the confirmation email from Willowcrest Gardens, congratulating me on completing my payment plan. The pavilion is officially yours for July 15th, it read. We look forward to making your special day perfect. I forwarded the email to myself, then printed a hard copy. Something told me I might need proof. That night, I dreamed of glass shattering, champagne flutes and picture frames and fragile family illusions breaking apart in slow motion. When morning came, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The next day, I called the venue. The receptionist transferred me to Mr. Harrison, the property manager I'd been working with for 3 years. Maya, congratulations on completing your payment plan. Not many couples show that kind of dedication. His voice was warm, genuine. Thank you, but there seems to be a problem, I said. My sister says the reservation has been transferred to her name. A pause. That's strange. We did have a woman come in claiming to be authorized to make changes to your reservation. She had documentation, a family authorization form with what appeared to be your signature. But we haven't processed any transfer. We were waiting to confirm with you first. Relief washed through me, quickly followed by anger. I never signed anything. That wasn't my signature. I had my doubts, Mr. Harrison admitted. It didn't quite match your payment signatures. Tell you what, can you come in this afternoon? We should sort this out in person. 3 hours later, I sat in Mr. Harrison's office at Willowcrest, staring at the form my sister had submitted. The signature was close to mine but slightly too perfect, missing the way my Y always dipped. Lower than the rest of my letters. Beside it was a falsified bank statement showing insufficient funds in my account. This is forgery, I said quietly. And this bank statement is completely fabricated. Mr. Harrison nodded gravely. I thought something wasn't right. In 3 years, you've never missed a payment. Always on time, sometimes early. He hesitated. There's something else you should know. The woman, your sister, I presume, mentioned that her fiancé's family has connections with the Willowcrest Board of Directors. She implied they might reconsider my position if the transfer wasn't approved. My stomach twisted. That sounds like Parker's family. They collect influence like trading cards. Well, Mr. Harrison said, straightening in his chair, I've been managing this property for 22 years. My father managed it before me. We don't operate on threats. He pulled out a leather portfolio and opened it carefully. This is your contract, completed in full. Willowcrest Gardens is yours for July 15th, as agreed. Tears pricked at my eyes. Thank you. Of course. He paused. Though I should warn you, your sister has already scheduled a tasting with our catering team next week. She's moving forward as if this is resolved in her favor. I thought for a moment. Let her come, I said finally. Don't tell her about our meeting. I need time to figure out what to do next. Mr. Harrison nodded, understanding in his eyes. As I stood to leave, he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small envelope. This came with your final payment processing. It's a deed of ceremony, something we offer to couples who complete our extended payment program. It's symbolic, mostly, but it grants you certain privileges for your event. I opened the envelope to find an elegant certificate, embossed with the Willowcrest seal, declaring that the pavilion and East Gardens were reserved in my name for July 15th. At the bottom, in formal script, the bearer of this certificate holds exclusive rights to the specified Willowcrest property on the date indicated. I thanked Mr. Harrison and walked slowly through the gardens toward my car. The pavilion stood in the distance, sunlight glinting off its glass panels. For a moment, I could see it as it would be on my wedding day, flowers along the aisle, chairs arranged in neat rows, Connor waiting for me beneath the central arch. Then I pictured Vanessa there instead, taking this too, like she'd taken so many things before. Dance solos I'd practiced for. The college acceptance my parents had framed. The promotion at my first job that somehow became about her connections. Always, she stood in the spotlight while I was pushed to the wings. Not this time, I thought. Not anymore. At home, I called Connor and told him everything. His initial shock gave way to quiet anger. We should confront them, he said. All of them. Together. Not yet, I replied. I need to understand how deep this goes first. The next morning, I visited my bank. The manager confirmed what I already suspected: someone had attempted to access my accounts using my personal information. The attempts had been flagged and blocked, but the timing matched exactly with Vanessa's visit to Willowcrest. Would you like to file a formal report? The bank manager asked. I hesitated. Not yet. But I'd like to change all my security questions. And passwords, please. That evening, as I was reviewing the bank's security documentation, my phone rang. It was my mother. Maya, darling, she began, her voice artificially bright. We're having a small family dinner on Saturday to discuss the wedding details. Your presence would mean so much to Vanessa. I almost laughed at the audacity. You want me to help plan the wedding you stole from me? No one stole anything, she said, her tone sharpening. Venues change hands all the time. Besides, your father already invited the Prestons, Parker's parents. It would be awkward if you weren't there. Heaven forbid we have awkwardness. I said. So you'll come? Saturday at 7. Wear something nice, not those teacher clothes. Before I could respond, she'd hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand, contemplating my options. Part of me wanted to refuse, to cut them all off until they acknowledged what they'd done. But another part, the strategist that had helped me save for 3 years while no one noticed, knew. I needed to see their next move. Saturday arrived, crisp and clear. I chose my outfit carefully, not the teacher clothes my mother despised, but a simple blue dress I'd bought for myself after my last promotion. No designer label, just something that made me feel confident. The Preston's silver Range Rover was already parked in my parents' driveway when I arrived. I could hear laughter from the back patio as I walked around the house, following the sound of clinking glasses and practiced small talk. My mother spotted me first, her smile tightening slightly at my appearance. Maya. Finally. Everyone, Maya has joined us. 6 faces turned toward me. My father, raising his whiskey in half-hearted greeting. My sister, resplendent in designer white, her hand possessively on Parker's arm. Parker himself, tall and polished like an expensive mannequin. And his parents, Elizabeth Preston with her surgical perfection and Richard Preston, whose law firm's billboards dominated the highway. Into downtown. The teacher's sister, Elizabeth said, her smile not reaching her eyes. How dedicated of you to join us. I accepted a glass of champagne from the hovering server, another sign this wasn't just a casual family dinner, and took a seat at the far end of the table. For 20 minutes, I observed as they discussed the wedding plans. My wedding plans, with slight modifications to make them more sophisticated. The string quartet is confirmed, my mother announced. Though Vanessa, darling, I still think we should consider the harpist as well. Absolutely, Elizabeth agreed. Richard's firm used a harpist for their last charity gala. Adds such an elegant touch. Vanessa nodded, making a note on her phone. And the florist confirmed we can upgrade from local blooms to imported peonies. Maya's original flower choices were a bit provincial. I sipped my champagne, saying, nothing. Speaking of upgrades, my father interjected, the venue manager called yesterday. Seemed confused about some payment details. My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression neutral. Richard Preston set down his glass. Not a problem, I hope? I told Parker to have my assistant handle any financial matters directly. We don't want complications. No complications, my father assured him. Just some paperwork to finalize the transfer. Apparently, Maya had been making small payments toward a reservation. Nothing substantial, but they need formal authorization to apply those funds to the enhanced package. How sweet of you to contribute, Maya, Elizabeth said, her condescension thinly veiled. Every little bit helps, doesn't it? The conversation moved on to menu selections. My carefully chosen local, sustainable options replaced with imported delicacies and exotic ingredients that would require special shipping. With each new detail, I felt a strange detachment growing. As if I were watching a play about people I used to know. Finally, my father cleared his throat. Now, there's the matter of the formal transfer. Maya, we need your signature on a few documents to keep everything above board. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were authorization forms, already filled out, with sticky tabs marking where I should sign. What exactly am I signing? I asked, my voice calmer than I felt. Just confirming the venue transfer, my mother said dismissively. Making it official that you're gifting your deposit to Vanessa's special day. I flipped through the paper slowly, reading every line. It wasn't just a venue transfer. It was a complete relinquishment of rights, to the date, the vendors, even the payment history. If I signed, it would be as if my 3 years of saving had never happened. And if I don't sign? I asked. The table went silent. Vanessa's perfect. Smile faltered. Don't be difficult, Maya, my father said, his businessman voice emerging. This is happening either way. The Prestons have already invested considerably in enhancing what would have been a very basic event. Basic, I repeated. Like my job? Like my fiancé? Like my life? No one's saying that, my mother interjected quickly, her eyes darting nervously to the Prestons. Actually, everyone's been saying that, I replied. Maybe not in those exact words, but the message has been clear. Richard Preston leaned forward, his expression that of a man used to getting his way. Young lady, perhaps you don't understand the financial realities here. The enhancements we've made to this venue reservation exceed your annual salary. We're talking about connections with the right people, access to exclusive services, things that would never have been available to you otherwise. Richard, my mother cautioned, but he waved her off. No, she needs to hear this. The real world operates on influence and access. Parker is being groomed for a partnership that will place him, and by extension, your sister, in a different social stratum. This wedding is a statement, not just a ceremony. I set down my glass. And my wedding would have been what, exactly? Quaint, Elizabeth offered, as if it were a compliment. Charming in its simplicity. But ultimately forgettable. I looked at each of them in turn, these people who had decided my most important day was expendable, forgettable, less than. And in that moment, something crystallized inside me. Not anger, though that was there too. Something harder, clearer, like diamond forming under pressure. I stood up, gathering the unsigned papers. I need some air. No one tried to stop me as I walked toward the garden, the folder clutched in my hand. Behind me, I heard the conversation resume, as if my departure were merely a minor interruption to their planning. In the garden, I pulled out my phone and dialed Connor. Can you meet me at Willowcrest tomorrow morning? There's something I need to do. I didn't sleep that night. The moon cast long shadows across my bedroom ceiling as I lay awake, staring upward, my mind racing through every conversation, every dismissal, every moment I'd stepped aside to make room for Vanessa's ambitions. Dawn was breaking when I finally rose, exhausted but resolute. I showered, dressed in a simple blue sundress, Connor's favorite, and drove to meet him at our cafe, the one halfway between our apartments where we'd had our first date 4 years ago. He was already waiting, 2 coffees on the table, worry etching lines around his eyes. I've been thinking about this all night, he said as I slid into the seat across from him. We could just elope. Go somewhere beautiful, Oregon coast, maybe. Just us, the ocean, and someone to make it legal. I reached for his hand, feeling its familiar warmth. That's not what this is about anymore. I know, he said quietly. It's about them seeing you. Really seeing you. I nodded, throat tight. With emotion. For years, I've been the practical one, the responsible one. I thought that meant something. But to them, it just meant I was forgettable. Connor's jaw tightened. You've never been forgettable to me. We sat in silence. For a moment, the cafe buzzing around us with morning regulars and the hiss of espresso machines. Finally, I pulled out my phone and showed him the email I'd received from Mr. Harrison early that morning. He's meeting us at Willowcrest at 9, I explained. And he's bringing something important. The drive to Willowcrest took us through the awakening city, past joggers and dog walkers enjoying the crisp spring morning. Connor kept his hand on mine as I navigated the familiar roads, squeezing gently whenever my grip on the steering wheel tightened. Mr. Harrison was waiting by the main entrance, a leather portfolio tucked under his arm. He greeted us warmly, his weathered face creasing into a smile. Thank you for coming on such short notice, he said, leading us down the stone path toward the administrative building. After our conversation yesterday, I did some research. What I found, well, you should see for yourself. Inside his office, Mr. Harrison spread several documents across his desk. When we established the extended payment program 10 years ago, we included a special provision. It was my father's idea, actually. He believed that anyone who showed the dedication to make consistent payments over years, especially young couples without family support, deserved additional protection. He pointed to a clause highlighted in yellow. This states that any couple completing the full payment plan not only reserves the date but becomes the legal holder of what we call a ceremony deed to the specific venue space for that date. It's more than a reservation, it's a temporary ownership right. I leaned forward, reading carefully. So the pavilion is legally mine on July 15th? Exactly, Mr. Harrison confirmed. No one, not family, not board members, not even our own management, can transfer those rights without your explicit, notarized consent. Connor's hand found mine again. They tried to forge that consent. Mr. Harrison's expression hardened. Yes, and that's a serious matter. Legally actionable. In fact. What does this mean practically? I asked, trying to process the implications. It means, Mr. Harrison said, pulling out the elegant certificate he'd shown me earlier, that you alone control what happens in that space on July 15th. You could host your wedding as planned, transfer the rights to someone else, though I strongly advise against forged documents. His eyes crinkled with the hint of a smile, or even leave it empty. The choice is entirely yours. A weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying seemed to lift from my shoulders. For 3 years, I'd made those payments, stretched my teacher's salary to its limits, picked up tutoring gigs and summer school sessions to afford my dream venue. And now, that perseverance had given me something my family never had, legitimate power. There's one more thing, Mr. Harrison added, pulling out another document. Your sister and her fiancé have scheduled a tasting and walkthrough this afternoon at 2. They've invited their full planning team, both sets of parents, and apparently several social media influencers to document the venue reveal. They don't know about our conversation or these documents. Connor looked at me. What do you want to do? I thought for a long moment, staring out the window at the pavilion gleaming in the morning sun. I want to be here, I said finally. When they arrive. I want them to understand exactly what they tried to take from me. We spent the next few hours walking the grounds of Willowcrest. Connor and I strolled through the rose garden, sat by the koi pond, and finally made our way to the pavilion itself. Standing inside its soaring glass walls, I could see our wedding as it should be, simple but beautiful, filled with people who genuinely cared about us, not about social positioning or business connections. We could still have this, Connor said softly, following my gaze. Exactly as you planned it. I squeezed his hand. Let's see what happens next. At precisely 1:45, cars began arriving, luxury vehicles with tinted windows. First my parents, then the Prestons in their Range Rover, followed by Vanessa and Parker in his sleek black Tesla. Behind them came 3 more cars carrying what appeared to be event planners, photographers, and a small film crew. Connor and I watched from Mr. Harrison's office window as they gathered on the main lawn, champagne being distributed by uniformed staff Vanessa must have arranged. My sister stood at the center, resplendent in white again, as if she were already the bride, already victorious. "Ready?" Connor asked, his voice steady and strong beside me. I nodded, taking the ceremony deed certificate from Mr. Harrison's desk. "Ready." We walked out together, hand in hand, crossing the lawn slowly. I saw my mother spot us first, her champagne glass freezing halfway to her lips. Then my father, his conversation with Richard Preston faltering mid-sentence. And finally Vanessa, turning to see what had captured everyone's attention, her perfect smile flickering like a candle in a sudden draft. "Maya," she said, recovering quickly, her voice carrying across the lawn. "What a surprise. Did Mom invite you to the tasting?" I kept walking until I stood directly before her, aware of the curious glances from the event team, the cameras that had swiveled in our direction. "No," I said simply. "But I don't need an invitation to my own property." Vanessa's laugh was practiced, dismissive. "Don't be dramatic. We've been over this." "Actually," Mr. Harrison said, appearing beside us with perfect timing, "there's been some confusion I need to clear up." He addressed the entire group, his voice carrying authority earned over decades. "Welcome to Willowcrest Gardens. I'm Albert Harrison, property manager. Before we proceed with today's events, there's an important matter of venue ownership we need to address." Richard Preston stepped forward, hand extended. "Richard Preston. I believe we spoke on the phone yesterday. Any administrative details can be handled through my office. We have a tight schedule today." Mr. Harrison didn't take the offered hand. Instead, he opened his leather portfolio. "This isn't an administrative detail, Mr. Preston. It's a matter of legal property rights." He turned to me. "Ms. Bennett has completed our extended payment program, making her the deed holder for the pavilion and East Gardens on July 15th, Vanessa's face drained of color. "That's impossible. We already transferred the reservation." "Attempted to transfer," Mr. Harrison corrected gently, "with what appeared to be falsified documents." My father stepped forward, his business smile firmly in place. "There must be some misunderstanding. My daughter Vanessa has already invested considerably in upgrading the venue package. Surely we can come to some arrangement." "Any arrangement," Mr. Harrison replied, "would require Ms. Bennett's explicit consent, as the legal holder of the ceremony deed." He handed me the certificate. I held it for a moment, feeling its weight, not just the paper, but what it represented. Years of work, of sacrifice, of believing in something enough to fight for it. "You can't be serious," Elizabeth Preston said, her perfect features contorting with disbelief. "This is about a signature on some obscure document? Do you know who we are?" "I know exactly who you are," I said, my voice steadier than I'd expected. "You're people who believe influence matters more than integrity. That connections outweigh commitment. That my 3 years of payments were just a convenient down payment for Vanessa's perfect day." The event planners had stopped their preparations, watching the drama unfold with professional curiosity. The photographer's camera clicked softly, documenting a moment very different from what they'd been hired to capture. "Maya, my mother," began, stepping toward me with her negotiation smile, the one she used when trying to smooth over uncomfortable truths. "No one is dismissing your contribution. But you have to admit, this venue makes much more sense for Vanessa's social position. Your wedding would have been lovely, but modest. Hers needs to make a statement." "And what statement is that, Mom?" I asked. "That nothing I work for matters? That my achievements can be taken whenever Vanessa wants them?" "That's not fair," Vanessa interjected, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. "Isn't it?" I countered. "You forged my signature. You fabricated bank statements. You tried to steal something I spent 3 years earning." Parker cleared his throat, lawyer mode activating. "Those are serious allegations without proof. I'd advise caution before making such claims publicly." He glanced meaningfully at the hovering film crew. Mr. Harrison stepped forward again. "Actually, we have the falsified documents on file, along with verification from Ms. Bennett's bank that the statements were fabricated. Willowcrest takes fraud very seriously, Mr. Preston." A heavy silence fell over the group. In that moment, I saw something I'd never witnessed before, uncertainty on Vanessa's face. For the first time in our lives, she couldn't charm or manipulate her way forward. She was confronting a boundary she couldn't simply step across. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "Money? Is that it? Name your price." The question hung in the air between us. What did I want? Revenge? Justice? For once in my life to watch Vanessa lose? Connor's hand found mine, warm and steady. I want you to understand what you tried to take from me, I said finally. Not just a venue. My dignity. My achievement. Something I earned through hard work, not connections, not privilege, not mom and dad's approval. Mine. Richard Preston stepped forward, business mask firmly in place. This is all very emotional, but surely we can resolve this practically. What if we— No, I interrupted, surprising myself with my firmness. This isn't a negotiation. The pavilion is mine on July 15th. I completed every payment. I hold the deed. I turned to Vanessa. You always thought you could take whatever you wanted from me. Not this time. The silence that followed was profound. My father shifted uncomfortably. My mother's smile had vanished completely. The event planners exchanged glances, clearly calculating whether they'd still be paid for the day. And then, from the back of the group, a voice spoke up. All right, that's a wrap for this location. Let's head back to the office and regroup. It was one of the event planners, a tall woman with a sleek ponytail and an iPad clutched to her chest. She approached Vanessa and Parker, speaking in a low, professional tone. We should discuss alternative venues immediately. I have 3 comparable locations that might have your date available. Reality was setting in. The perfect wedding Vanessa had tried to steal was slipping through her fingers. For a moment, I felt a surge of satisfaction, then something else, something unexpected. Not pity, exactly. Recognition. I recognized the look on my sister's face, the desperate need for approval, for perfection, for being special, because I'd felt it too, growing up in her shadow. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. I'll give you all some privacy to discuss next steps. Ms. Bennett, my office is available if you need it. He retreated tactfully toward the administrative building. My parents, the Prestons, and the event team began a heated discussion about alternative options and financial implications. Vanessa stood slightly apart, her perfect posture finally faltering, shoulders curved inward as she stared at her phone, probably already dreading the social media fallout. Connor squeezed my hand. Want to get out of here? I nodded, suddenly exhausted by it all. As we turned to leave, Vanessa looked up, catching my eye. For a brief moment, something passed between us, an understanding, perhaps, or the ghost of the sisterhood we might have had in another life. We were halfway across the lawn when I heard footsteps behind us. Maya, wait. It was my father, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Can we talk? Just us? Connor glanced at me questioningly. I nodded. I'll be fine. Wait for me by the koi pond? When Connor had walked away, my father sighed heavily. This isn't how I wanted things to go. How did you want them to go, Dad? Me quietly stepping aside while you gave everything to Vanessa? Again? He flinched slightly. It wasn't like that. It was practical. The Prestons have connections that could help the whole family. Help who, exactly? Because it seems like Vanessa is the only one who ever benefits from these practical decisions. He ran a hand through his graying hair. You've always been the strong one, Maya. The independent one. You never seemed to need us the way she did. So I get punished for being self-sufficient? For not demanding constant attention? Not punished. He protested. We worry about her more. You always land on your feet. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the powerful businessman I'd grown up fearing and respecting, but a tired man who'd spent decades enabling one daughter at the expense of another. I worked 3 jobs some semesters to make those venue payments, I said quietly. I tutored kids after school. I taught summer sessions when I should have been resting. I did all that without asking for help because I knew you'd say no, that it wasn't practical to spend money on my dreams. He had the grace to look ashamed. I didn't know. You never asked. We stood in silence for a moment, the weight of years of unspoken hurts hanging between us. What happens now? He finally asked. I looked back at the pavilion gleaming in the afternoon sun. I'm getting married there on July 15th, just like I planned. What happens with you and Vanessa is up to you. He nodded slowly. And your mother? Will you talk to her? Eventually, I said. But not today. As he turned to leave, I called after him. Dad? One more thing. Stop using the word practical when what you really mean is Vanessa gets her way. A ghost of a smile crossed his face, not amusement, but recognition. He nodded once more, then walked back toward the group still huddled in damage control mode. I found Connor by the koi pond, watching the orange and white fish glide beneath the surface. When I approached, he opened his arms without a word, and I stepped into them, letting his strength support me. You were magnificent, he murmured into my hair. I was terrified, I admitted. Those aren't mutually exclusive. We stood there for a long moment, the sun warming our shoulders, the gentle splash of the koi the only sound. Finally, I pulled back enough to look up at him. Let's go home, I said. Your apartment or mine? He asked. I thought about my small teacher's apartment with its mismatched furniture and overflowing bookshelves. About his environmental scientist's bungalow with the native plant garden and the solar panels he'd installed himself. Neither was impressive by my family's standards. Both were filled with purpose and authenticity. Either, I said. Both. Wherever. We're together. As we walked toward the parking lot, I glanced back once at the pavilion. It no longer felt like just a wedding venue. It was a testament to perseverance, to believing in myself when no one else did. July 15th would come, and I would walk down that aisle, not because anyone handed it to me, but because I had earned every step. The following week passed in a strange, suspended state. I returned to my classroom, guiding sixth graders through the wonders of cellular biology and the water cycle. Connor flew to Seattle for a 3-day conference on watershed management. On the surface, life resumed its normal rhythm. But beneath that normality, everything had shifted. My mother called. Daily, messages I let go to voicemail. My father texted once, when you're ready to talk, I'll listen. Vanessa remained conspicuously silent. It was Tuesday evening when my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw Remy, my younger cousin and Jade's brother, shifting awkwardly from foot to foot. Hey, he said when I opened the door. Sorry to just show up. Can I come in? I stepped aside, curious. Remy and I had always been friendly but not particularly close. At family gatherings, he tended to hover on the periphery, much as I did. Everything okay? I asked as he perched on the edge of my sofa. Not really. He ran a hand through his dark hair, a nervous gesture that reminded me of my father. I heard about what happened at Willowcrest. It's all anyone in the family is talking about. I'm sure Vanessa has her version of events circulating. That's just it, Remy said. She's saying almost nothing, which is weird. For Vanessa. He hesitated. But Aunt Caroline, your mom, she's telling everyone you had some kind of breakdown. That you're being unreasonable and selfish. A familiar weight settled in my chest. Of course my mother would spin it that way. The stable, reliable daughter couldn't possibly have legitimate grievances, she must be having a breakdown. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Remy met my eyes directly. Because it's bullshit, and some of us know it. Jade and I, we've seen how they treat you. How they always favor Vanessa. And we thought you should know not everyone's buying the official story this time. His words touched something deep inside me, a loneliness I'd carried for so long I'd stopped noticing its weight. The idea that others had seen what was happening, that I hadn't imagined the pattern of favoritism and dismissal, felt like validation I hadn't known I needed. Thank you, I said simply. Remy nodded. There's something else. Vanessa came to my apartment yesterday. She was different. Quiet. She asked if I thought you'd ever forgive her. I blinked in surprise. What did you tell her? That I didn't know. That she'd have to actually apologize first, really apologize, not that fake sorry you feel that way thing she usually does. He stood, heading toward the door. Anyway, I thought you should know. And I'm glad you stood up for yourself. It was time someone did. After he left, I sat in the gathering darkness of my living room, thinking about patterns, how they form, how they persist, how sometimes it takes a single act of disruption to break them. My phone buzzed with a text from Connor, conference ending early. Home tomorrow. Miss you. I smiled, typing back, miss you too. Safe travels. Then, after a moment's hesitation, I opened my mother's latest voicemail. Maya, darling, this silence isn't helping anyone. The Prestons are absolutely livid, and your father's business connections are at risk. Vanessa is beside herself. You need to be reasonable and work with us on a solution. Call me back. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just pressure to fall back. In line, to be reasonable, that familiar code word for sacrifice. I deleted the message, then scrolled to Vanessa's contact. No calls. No texts. Just silence from the sister who had always demanded to be heard. Instead of calling her, I opened my laptop and navigated to the wedding planning spreadsheet I'd been maintaining for months. Every detail carefully considered, every expense accounted for. I had built this dream piece by piece, payment by payment. And now, for the first time, I allowed myself to truly believe it would happen, not as a compromise, not as a consolation prize, but exactly as I had envisioned it. July 15th was mine. The pavilion was mine. This moment of standing firm, of claiming what I had earned, was mine. I closed the laptop and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. Something had fundamentally changed, not just in how my family saw me, but in how I saw myself. I was no longer waiting for permission or approval. I was no longer the reliable daughter who would step aside without complaint. I was the woman who had fought for her dream and won. The morning Connor returned from Seattle, we met for breakfast at our favorite diner, the one with cracked vinyl booths and pancakes the size of dinner plates. He looked tired from travel but smiled when he saw me, his eyes crinkling at the corners in the way that had first made my heart flutter 4 years ago. "You look different," he said after we'd ordered. "More? I don't know. Present." I considered this. "I feel different. Like I've been holding my breath for years and finally remembered how to exhale." He reached across the table, his fingers intertwining with mine. "I've been thinking about what happened at Willowcrest. About your family. And I realized something, I've never actually seen you angry before. Not really angry." The observation surprised me. "That can't be true." "It is," he insisted. "You get frustrated, disappointed, sad. But actual anger? You always pull back, like you're not allowed to feel it." I thought about this as our coffee arrived, steam curling into the space between us. He was right. For as long as I could remember, I'd been the peacekeeper, the one who smoothed things over, who accommodated everyone else's emotions while carefully containing my own. "My parents always praised me for being reasonable," I said slowly. "It was the highest compliment in our house." Meanwhile, Vanessa's outbursts were treated as passion, as evidence of her artistic temperament. The rules were always different. "And now you're changing the rules," Connor said, not as a question but as a statement of fact. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Harrison: "Important development regarding your venue. Please call at your convenience." My stomach tightened. After exchanging a glance with Connor, I stepped outside the diner to make the call. "Ms. Bennett, thank you for calling back so promptly," Mr. Harrison said when he answered. "I wanted to inform you personally, your sister and her fiancé have booked our West Gardens for July 15th. I gripped the phone tighter. "The West Gardens? But that's just on the other side of the property from the pavilion." "Yes," he confirmed. "They've reserved the rose garden and terrace area for their ceremony and reception. I wanted you to hear it from me rather than discover it later." My mind raced. The West Gardens were beautiful, different from the glass pavilion I'd chosen, but equally prestigious. They were also close enough that our 2 weddings would practically overlap, with only the small lake and willow grove separating the spaces. "When did they book it?" I asked. "Yesterday afternoon. They came with both sets of parents and made the full payment on site." He paused. "Ms. Bennett, I want to assure you that your ceremony deed for the pavilion remains completely valid and separate. Their event cannot encroach on your space in any way." After thanking him and ending the call, I stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, watching morning traffic pass by. Of course Vanessa wouldn't simply find another venue. Of course she would position herself as close as possible to what she couldn't have. The question was why. Was it spite? A refusal to admit defeat? Or something else entirely? When I returned to our table, Connor took one look at my face and set down his fork. "What happened?" I explained the situation, watching his expression shift from surprise to concern. "So instead of finding a completely different venue, they're basically going to be having their wedding right next to ours? On the same day?" I nodded, pushing my pancakes around my plate. Classic Vanessa. If she can't have exactly what she wants, she'll get as close as possible and then act like it was her first choice all along. Connor frowned. "But why? There are dozens of beautiful venues in Portland. Why insist on the same date, the same property?" "Because it's not about the venue," I said, the realization crystallizing as I spoke. "It's about winning. If they had their wedding somewhere else, it would mean they lost. This way, they can pretend it was the plan all along, to have the exclusive West Gardens instead of my ordinary pavilion." "What do you want to do?" Connor asked, his voice gentle. I thought about it, really thought about it. The old Maya would have given in, would have changed her date to avoid the conflict, the inevitable family drama of dual weddings. The old Maya would have convinced herself it was the practical thing, the reasonable choice. But I wasn't that. Pas un humeur. "Nothing," I said finally. "We're getting married in the pavilion on July 15th, exactly as planned. If Vanessa wants to have her wedding 30 yards away on the same day, that's her choice." Connor's smile was slow but certain. "I was hoping you'd say that." The following week brought a flurry of activity. With our venue and date secure, we finalized details with our original vendors, the local caterer whose farm-to-table approach matched our values, the florist who specialized in native blooms, the small string quartet from the university where Connor had done his graduate work. Each confirmation felt like a small victory, a reclaiming of the vision I'd held for so long. And with each passing day, I felt my confidence growing, not just about the wedding, but about my right to hold my ground, to take up space, to be seen. It was Thursday afternoon when the school secretary buzzed my classroom. "Maya, you have a visitor in the main office." I dismissed my students for lunch and made my way down the empty hallway, assuming it was a parent or perhaps the science kit delivery I'd been expecting. Instead, I found Vanessa perched awkwardly on a plastic chair in the waiting area, looking out of place in her designer clothes amid the hand-drawn posters and elementary school artwork. She stood when she saw me, smoothing her skirt with nervous hands. "Can we talk? Somewhere private?" I led her to the teacher's lounge, thankfully empty during the lunch period. She glanced around at the mismatched furniture, the overcrowded bulletin board, the coffee machine that had probably been new when we were children. "So this is where you spend your days," she said, not unkindly. "Part of them," I replied, choosing a seat at the small table. "What do you want, Vanessa?" She sat across from me, her usual confidence notably absent. "I heard you know about the West Gardens. Mr. Harrison called me." She nodded, fidgeting with the gold bracelet on her wrist. "I wanted to explain why." "You don't need to," I interrupted. "I understand perfectly. You couldn't have exactly what you wanted, so you got as close as possible. You're making sure that even on my wedding day, I'll still feel your presence, still know that you're there, commanding attention." Her eyes widened slightly. That's not why." "Then why, Vanessa? Why the same day? Why the same property? There are countless venues in Portland, in Oregon, that would be perfect for your elevated wedding." She looked down at her hands, the diamond on her ring finger catching the fluorescent light. "Because I didn't want to lose you," she said. So quietly I almost missed it. I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. "What?" "I know what I did was wrong," she continued, still not meeting my eyes. "The forged documents, the lies. When you confronted us at Willowcrest, I saw something in your eyes I'd never seen before. Like you were done with me. With all of us. And I panicked. So your solution was to book a wedding venue right next to mine? How does that make any sense?" She finally looked up, and I was startled to see tears in her eyes. "Because this way, we'd still be connected. Even if you hated me, we'd share our wedding day. We'd be in the same place at the same time. I couldn't bear the thought of you cutting me out completely." The admission hung in the air between us, unexpected and disarming. For the first time in my life, I was seeing Vanessa vulnerable, not performing, not manipulating, just afraid. "I've always been jealous of you," she said after a moment. I laughed in disbelief. "That's ridiculous. You've had everything handed to you. Mom and Dad's approval, opportunities, connections, but never your steadiness," she interrupted. "Your certainty. You've always known exactly who you are and what you want. I've been chasing approval my whole life, trying to be special enough, perfect enough. It's exhausting." I sat back, trying to reconcile this version of Vanessa with the confident, polished sister who had always seemed to navigate life effortlessly. "The pavilion meant so much to you that you worked for years to afford it," she continued. "I've never wanted anything that badly. I just wanted what people expected me to want." "Like Parker?" I asked, remembering the way she clung to his arm at family gatherings, how her smile seemed to tighten whenever he spoke about his career ambitions. She looked away. "Parker makes sense. Our families have known each other for years. He's successful. Driven. Our marriage will open doors. But do you love him?" The question hung between us, simple but devastating. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears again. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know if I know what that's supposed to feel like." Something shifted inside me then, not forgiveness, exactly, but a new understanding. The sister I'd envied and resented for so long suddenly seemed less like an adversary and more like a casualty of the same toxic expectations that had diminished me. "What do you want, Vanessa?" I asked, gentler this time. "Not what Mom and Dad want for you, not what the Prestons expect. What do you want?" She shook her head slightly. "I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before." We sat in silence for a moment, the muted sounds of children at recess filtering through the window. Finally, I spoke. "I can't tell you what to do about your wedding or about Parker. But I know what it's like to finally stand up and claim something for yourself. It's terrifying. And then it's the most liberating feeling in the world." Vanessa wiped at her eyes, careful not to smudge her makeup. "I wouldn't even know where to start. You start by asking yourself what you really want. And then you find the courage to say it out loud." The lunch bell rang, signaling the end of our private moment. Vanessa stood, composing herself with the practiced ease of someone who had been hiding her true feelings for years. "Thank you for talking to me," she said. "I know you didn't have to." We're still sisters, I replied. That hasn't changed, even if everything else has. She nodded, then hesitated at the door. For what it's worth, I am sorry. For everything. After she left, I sat in the empty teacher's lounge for a long moment, trying to process what had just happened. The sister who had always seemed invincible had shown me her cracks, her uncertainties. The golden child was just as damaged as I was, just in different ways. That evening, I told Connor about Vanessa's visit as we walked through the neighborhood park, the spring air soft around us. Do you believe her? He asked. About why she booked the West Gardens? I considered the question carefully. I believe she's scared of losing our connection, yes. But I also think she doesn't know how to relate to me except through competition. It's all we've ever had. Connor was quiet for a moment. What about your parents? Have they reached out again? Mom keeps calling. Dad texts occasionally. I'm not ready to talk to them yet. He nodded, respecting my pace. And the dual weddings? Are we still moving forward with our original plan? Absolutely, I said without hesitation. Whatever Vanessa decides to do with her wedding, or her relationship, is up to her. Our day is about us, not about family drama. He smiled, squeezing my hand. I like this new, decisive you. She was always there, I replied. Just waiting for permission to speak up. 2 days later, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a woman's clipped, professional voice greeted me. Ms. Bennett? This is Leona Kraft. I'm the event planner handling your sister's wedding at Willowcrest West Gardens. I tensed, bracing for some new complication. Yes? I'm calling because there's been a significant change in plans. Your sister has postponed her wedding indefinitely and asked me to contact the venue manager about transferring certain arrangements. I sat down, surprised. Postponed? Did she say why? That's not for me to discuss, Leona replied diplomatically. However, she specifically asked that I contact you about the floral arrangements. She mentioned you had reserved native blooms for your pavilion ceremony, and she's authorized me to offer those to you for your reception as well, if you're interested. They've been paid for in full. Yes, I'd be interested, I managed, still processing the news. Thank you. After ending the call, I immediately tried calling Vanessa. No answer. I sent a text, just heard from your planner. Are you okay? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, better than okay. For the first time in my life, I'm being honest with myself. Can we meet tomorrow? We arranged to meet at a small cafe midway between our homes, neutral territory, away from family influences. When I arrived, Vanessa was already there, looking different somehow. It took me a moment to realize what had changed. She wasn't wearing makeup, and her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. You postponed the wedding, I said as I slid into the seat across from her. She nodded, turning her coffee cup in small circles. I realized I was marrying Parker for all the wrong reasons. After our talk at your school, I couldn't stop thinking about what you asked me, if I loved him. And the truth is, I don't. I never have. How did he take it? A small smile crossed her face. Surprisingly well, actually. I think he was relieved. He's been feeling the pressure from his parents just as much as I felt it from ours. And Mom and Dad? Her smile faded. They're processing. Dad's mostly concerned about his business relationships with the Prestons. Mom keeps saying, I'm having a quarter-life crisis and suggesting therapists. Are you? Having a crisis, I mean. Vanessa considered this. Maybe. But for the first time, it feels like my crisis, not one manufactured by our family's expectations. She took a sip of her coffee. I've decided to take some time for myself. Figure out what I actually want, not what I've been told to want. That sounds like a good plan, I said, genuinely impressed by her courage. I've also been thinking about our weddings, or now, just yours. I want you to have the day you've worked so hard for, without any complications from me. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick envelope. These are all the vendor contracts I had for the West Gardens. The deposits have been paid through the end of the year. If any of them would enhance your wedding, they're yours. I stared at the envelope, caught off guard by her generosity. Vanessa, I don't know what to say. Say you'll let me help with your wedding, not take over, just help. As your sister, not your competition. She hesitated. If you want me there at all, that is. The question was asked so vulnerably, so unlike the confident sister I'd grown up with, that it caught me completely off guard. Of course I want you there, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. You're my sister. That hasn't changed. Relief washed over her face. I've been so afraid that I'd ruined everything between us. That after what I tried to do with the venue, you'd never forgive me. I'm still working on the forgiveness part, I admitted. But I understand better now why you did it. Our family created this dynamic between us a long time ago. We've both been playing parts we were assigned. She nodded, blinking back tears. I don't want to play that part anymore. I want to be your sister, really be your sister, not your rival. For the first time in years, maybe ever, I felt a genuine connection with Vanessa. Not the forced politeness of family gatherings or the tense competition that had defined our relationship, but something authentic. I'd like that, I said simply. We spent the next hour talking, really talking, about our childhoods, our parents' expectations, the ways we'd both been shaped by family dynamics. Vanessa confessed how she'd always felt that her value depended on achievement, on being exceptional, while I admitted how I'd resigned myself to being overlooked, to being the practical daughter. As we were preparing to leave, Vanessa asked, "Have you talked to Mom and Dad yet?" I shook my head. "Not ready." "When you are," she said, "I'd like to be there with you. Not to speak for you, you found your voice perfectly well on your own, but to stand with you." The offer touched me deeply. I'd like that too. Outside the cafe, as we were about to part ways, Vanessa suddenly wrapped her arms around me in a fierce hug. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see you," she whispered. "To really see you." I hugged her back, feeling something heal between us, not completely, not instantly, but genuinely. As we pulled apart, I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before when she looked at me: respect. The weeks that followed brought a flurry of wedding preparations, but with a different energy than before. Instead of anxiety and doubt, I approached each decision with confidence and clarity. This was my day, my vision, earned through perseverance and self-belief. Vanessa kept her word, offering help without taking over. She came with me to the final menu tasting, gave thoughtful opinions when asked, and stepped back when I made choices different from what she would have selected. It was a new dynamic for us both, and though sometimes awkward, it felt like growth. My parents remained a more complicated matter. My mother continued to call, her messages growing increasingly frustrated with my silence. My father sent occasional texts, brief, somewhat formal, but with an undercurrent of genuine concern. "They're struggling to understand what's changed," Vanessa explained one evening as we finalized the seating chart for the reception. "All these years, they've counted on you being the flexible one, the one who accommodates everyone else. They don't know how to interact with this new version of you who stands her ground." "I'm not responsible for their adjustment," I said, more sharply than I'd intended. Vanessa nodded. "You're right. You're not. But at some point, if you want them in your life, you'll need to have that conversation." I knew she was right. As the wedding approached, the unresolved tension with my parents hung over the preparations like a shadow. I wanted my wedding day to be about moving forward, not about old wounds and resentments. 2 weeks before the ceremony, I finally called my father. "I'm ready to talk," I said when he answered. "All of us. Tomorrow evening at my apartment." The silence on the line stretched for a moment. "We'll be there," he said finally. After hanging up, I called Connor to tell him about the planned family meeting. "Do you want me there?" he asked. I considered the question carefully. "No. This is something I need to do myself. But maybe you could come over afterward?" "I might need the reinforcement." "Absolutely," he promised. "Call me when they leave, and I'll be there in 10 minutes with takeout and moral support." The next evening, I arranged 4 chairs in my small living room, set out water and coffee, and waited. Vanessa arrived first, giving me a quick hug and a whispered, "You've got this." My parents arrived exactly on time, my mother carrying a bouquet of lilies that she thrust into my hands like a peace offering. "The place looks cozy," she said, glancing around my modest apartment. "Mom," Vanessa warned quietly. My father cleared his throat. "Thank you for inviting us, Maya. We have a lot to discuss." We settled into the arranged chairs, an awkward silence falling over us. I took a deep breath, determined to set the tone for this conversation. "I asked you here because my wedding is in 2 weeks, and I want to move forward without this tension hanging over us," I began. "But moving forward doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It means acknowledging the truth and making real changes." My mother shifted uncomfortably. "Darling, every family has its little dynamics. This isn't about little dynamics," I interrupted firmly. "This is about a pattern that's existed my entire life." Vanessa was always the golden child, the one whose dreams and ambitions mattered. I was the reliable one, the practical one, the one expected to step aside whenever there was a conflict. "That's not fair," my father protested. "We've always been proud of both our daughters." "Proud, maybe," I conceded. "But not equally invested. Not equally supportive." I turned to look directly at him. "When was the last time you asked about my career goals? My aspirations? When have either of you shown the same enthusiasm for my achievements that you show? For Vanessa's? Neither of them answered. The venue wasn't just about a wedding, I continued. It was about finally claiming something for myself, working for it, earning it, only to have you assume I should give it up because Vanessa wanted it. Do you have any idea how that felt? My mother's perfect posture faltered slightly. We didn't realize the venue meant so much to you. Because you never asked, I said simply. You never asked what matters to me, what I dream about, what I work for. You just assumed my life was secondary to Vanessa's. Vanessa reached over and squeezed my hand, a silent show of support. My father leaned forward, his expression serious. You're right. We haven't been fair to you, Maya. We fell into patterns with both of you, expecting Vanessa to be exceptional, expecting you to be dependable. It wasn't intentional, but that doesn't make it any less harmful. His acknowledgement, so direct and unqualified, caught me by surprise. I had expected defensiveness, justifications, not this straightforward acceptance of responsibility. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. When you stopped taking our calls, it forced us to reflect on why you might be so angry. I didn't like what I saw when I looked back at how we've treated you. We're not asking for immediate forgiveness, my father added. But we are asking for a chance to do better, to really see you for who you are, not for the role we've assigned you and our family. I looked at them both, really looked at them. For the first time, I saw not just my parents with their expectations and judgments, but two flawed people who had made mistakes they were now trying to acknowledge. I can't promise that everything will be fixed immediately, I said honestly. But I'm willing to try building something new if you are. Something based on mutual respect and genuine support. We are, my father said firmly. Whatever that takes. My mother nodded, reaching for my hand. Your wedding, it's going to be beautiful. Exactly as you planned it. And we'll be there to celebrate you and Connor, not to critique or compare. The tension in the room seemed to ease slightly, not disappeared but lessened. There was honesty in this moment that had been missing from our family interactions for as long as I could remember. There's one more thing, I said, turning to Vanessa. Something I'd like to ask you. She looked at me questioningly. Would you be my maid of honor? Not because you're my sister and it's expected, but because I want you there, standing with me as I start this new chapter. Tears filled her eyes. Really? After everything that happened? Because of everything that happened, I clarified. Because we're both finding our true voices, not just playing the parts we were assigned. She nodded, unable to speak through her emotion. My mother wiped away tears of her own, and even my father seemed moved. In that moment, sitting in my small apartment with my imperfect family, I realized something profound. Strength isn't about never being hurt or never making mistakes. It's about having the courage to speak your truth, to set boundaries, and to offer forgiveness when it's earned. 2 weeks later, I would walk down the aisle in the pavilion I had worked so hard to secure. But the true victory wasn't the venue itself, it was the woman I had become in fighting for it. A woman who knew her worth, who spoke her truth, who stood her ground. And that was a victory no one could ever take away from me. The morning of July 15th arrived with the kind of perfect weather that wedding planners dream about: clear blue skies, a gentle breeze, temperatures hovering in the mid-70s. I stood at my bedroom window, watching sunlight filter through the maple trees outside my apartment, feeling strangely calm. Not the numbness that comes from suppressing emotions, but a genuine, centered peace. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa, already at Willowcrest. Everything is perfect. Hair and makeup team arriving in 30 minutes. Don't worry about a thing. I smiled, still getting used to this new version of my sister, supportive without being controlling, enthusiastic without taking over. The past 2 weeks had brought us closer than we'd been since childhood, as if removing the competition between us had created space for actual connection. My mother arrived just as I was finishing my coffee. She entered cautiously, as if unsure of her welcome, carrying a small blue velvet box. You look beautiful already, she said, her voice softer than usual. Even before all the bridal preparations. Thanks, Mom. She sat on the edge of my sofa, turning the velvet box in her hands. I brought something. If you'd like to wear it. She opened the box to reveal a delicate pearl hairpin with tiny sapphires forming a flower pattern. It was my grandmother's. She wore it at her wedding in 1932. I took the box, examining the antique piece. It's beautiful. You don't have to use it if it doesn't fit with your plans, she added quickly. I know you've thought through every detail. The consideration in her voice, the acknowledgement of my agency, my choices, felt new and precious. It's perfect for my something blue, I said. Thank you. Relief washed over her face. I wasn't sure, after everything. Your father is already at Willowcrest, making sure everything is exactly as you wanted. He's been quite fierce with the vendors, actually. I've never seen him so protective of details before. The image made me smile. My father, usually focused on bottom lines and practical outcomes, suddenly transformed into a guardian of wedding aesthetics. He's trying, I said. We both are, she replied. 2 hours later, I arrived at Willowcrest, entering through the private bridal suite entrance that Mr. Harrison had arranged. The room was filled with soft natural light, with views overlooking the gardens where guests would soon gather. Vanessa was directing the hairstylist while simultaneously texting the photographer, looking completely in her element but careful not to overstep. The florist just delivered everything, she reported, looking up as I entered. The pavilion looks like something from a fairy tale, but not in a cheesy way. Very you, elegant, natural, authentic. My mother began unpacking my dress, simple ivory silk with delicate lace detailing at the shoulders, nothing elaborate or ostentatious, just clean lines and beautiful fabric. As the stylist began working on my hair, I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror, cheeks flushed with excitement, eyes bright and clear. You look happy, Vanessa said, pausing beside me. I am, I replied, surprised by how completely I meant it. This happiness wasn't just about marrying Connor, though that was a big part of it. It was about standing firmly in my own life, making choices based on my values, not on others' expectations. Good, she said simply. That's how it should be. The next hour passed in a whirl of activity, hair, makeup, the careful donning of my dress, my mother's hands trembling slightly as she fastened the tiny pearl buttons running down my back. Jade arrived with the other bridesmaids, their blue dresses exactly the shade I'd chosen months ago. Through it all, I remained present, absorbing each moment instead of rushing toward the next one. This day wasn't just a culmination but a beginning, of my marriage to Connor, yes, but also of a new chapter in how I move through the world. A knock at the door announced Mr. Harrison. Ms. Bennett? If you're ready, I'd like a word. Vanessa opened the door, revealing the venue manager in a sharp gray suit, holding a leather portfolio similar to the one he'd carried the day I confronted my family. You look lovely, he said, smiling warmly. Truly radiant. Thank you, I replied. Is everything okay with the pavilion? Everything is perfect, he assured me. But I have something important to give you before the ceremony. He opened the portfolio and removed an elegant certificate, larger and more elaborate than the ceremony deed he'd shown me months ago. This is somewhat unprecedented, but the Willowcrest board was so impressed by your dedication over these past 3 years that they've decided to make you an honorary lifetime member. I accepted the certificate, reading the formal script. In recognition of exceptional commitment and perseverance, Willowcrest Gardens hereby extends lifetime visitation privileges to Maya Bennett and family. What does this mean exactly? I asked, tracing the embossed seal with my fingertip. It means, Mr. Harrison explained, that you and your family can visit Willowcrest anytime, without entrance fees or special arrangements. The gardens are open to you for anniversaries, family gatherings, or quiet afternoon walks. It's our way of honoring how much this place clearly means to you. The gesture touched me deeply, not just for its generosity but for the recognition behind it. For 3 years, I had made those monthly payments without fanfare or acknowledgement from anyone. Now, that quiet persistence was being celebrated. Thank you, I said, emotion making my voice husky. This means more than I can express. Mr. Harrison nodded, understanding in his eyes. Your guests are seated. The string quartet is ready. Your father is waiting just outside to walk you down the aisle whenever you're ready. After he left, my mother carefully adjusted my veil, her hands gentle on my shoulders. Maya, she said softly, I want you to know how proud I am, not just today, but of the woman you've become. The strength you've shown. Coming from her, these words carried special weight. For so long, I'd craved this kind of recognition from my parents, this acknowledgement of my worth beyond being reliable or practical. Thank you, Mom, I said simply. She stepped back, dabbing carefully at her eyes to preserve her makeup. I'll go take my seat. Your father is waiting. As the door closed behind her, Vanessa handed me my bouquet, wildflowers and native blooms. Gathered that morning, wrapped with a simple ivory ribbon. Ready? She asked. I took a deep breath, centering myself in this moment. Ready. Outside, my father waited in a dark suit, nervousness evident in how he straightened his already perfect tie. When he saw me, his composure faltered for a moment. Maya, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You look. I don't have words. I smiled, adjusting my grip on the bouquet. It's okay, Dad. I know. He offered his arm, and as I took it, he covered my hand with his. I was wrong before. He said quietly. About so many things. You were never just the practical one, the reliable one. You were always extraordinary, I just didn't have the wisdom to see it. The admission, so direct and heartfelt, loosened something in my chest. Thank you for seeing it now. We walked slowly toward the pavilion, the string quartet's music floating through the summer air. Through the glass walls, I could see our guests seated in neat rows, Connor standing tall beside the officiant, his best friend from college at his side. At the entrance, my father paused. Before we go in, he said, his voice low, I want you to know something. That ownership certificate for the pavilion? I've had it framed. It's my gift to you, not because of what it represents about this day, but because of what it says about you. About your determination, your integrity, your strength. I looked up at him, surprised. You framed the ceremony deed? He nodded. It belongs on your wall, Maya. A reminder of what you're capable of. When you decide something matters. With those words resonating in my heart, we began our procession. The pavilion glowed in the afternoon sun, light dancing through the glass panels, illuminating the native flowers arranged along the aisle and around the central arch. Each step felt significant, deliberate, a woman walking confidently toward the future she had chosen, the life she had claimed. Connor's face as he watched me approach, that mixture of awe and love and certainty, is something I'll carry with me always. But equally precious was the knowledge that I was bringing my whole self to this moment, not a diminished version shaped by others' expectations. The ceremony itself passed in a beautiful blur of vows and rings and promises. Connor's voice steady. As he pledged his life to mine, my own clear and unwavering as I did the same. When the officiant pronounced us married, the pavilion erupted in applause and cheers, genuine joy filling the space I had worked so hard to secure. At the reception, held on the pavilion's adjoining terrace, Mr. Harrison approached with a small wrapped package. A personal gift, he explained, from me to you. Inside was a beautiful leather-bound journal with Willowcrest embossed on the cover. For recording your story, he said. The one that began here but will continue far beyond these gardens. I thanked him, touched by the thoughtfulness. As he moved away to speak with other guests, Connor slipped his arm around my waist. Happy, he asked, his lips close to my ear. Completely, I replied, leaning into him. And not just because of today. Because of everything it took to get here. He smiled, understanding in his eyes. The view's always better when you've climbed the mountain yourself. As the evening progressed, I found myself observing my family with new eyes. My father, relaxed for once, chatting amicably with Connor's parents about their shared interest in native plant conservation. My mother, genuinely listening to my college roommate describe her work in urban education. Vanessa, dancing joyfully with friends, no longer performing or competing, just being present. We had all changed in these past months, not just in how we related to each other, but in how we understood ourselves. The old patterns hadn't disappeared completely, but they had been acknowledged, examined, and gently redirected. Near sunset, as golden light bathed the pavilion in warmth, I stepped outside for a moment alone. From this vantage point, I could see the West Gardens where Vanessa's wedding would have been held, beautiful in their own right, but different from the glass pavilion I had chosen. Different, not better or worse. There was a metaphor there. About our lives, our choices, our futures. Connor found me there, 2 champagne flutes in hand. Taking a breather from your adoring public, he teased, offering me a glass. I accepted it with a smile. Just taking it all in. Making memories. He clinked his glass against mine. To memories. And to making new ones, every day, together. I'll drink to that. As we stood there, silhouetted against the setting sun, I felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for this perfect day or for the man beside me, but for the journey that had brought me here. For the challenges that had forced me to find my voice, to stand my ground, to recognize my own worth. 3 months later, on a crisp October afternoon, Connor and I used our lifetime membership to visit Willowcrest. The gardens were transformed by autumn, the summer blooms replaced by rich golds and deep reds, the air carrying the scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke. We walked hand in hand down the familiar stone paths, past the koi pond and through the willow grove, finally reaching the pavilion where we had exchanged our vows. It stood empty now, sunlight streaming through its glass walls, peaceful in its solitude. It feels different, Connor observed, being here without all the wedding activity. I nodded, letting my fingers trail along the cool glass. But still special. We continued our walk, eventually finding ourselves near the West Gardens where Vanessa's wedding would have been held. To my surprise, she was there, sitting alone on a stone bench overlooking the rose beds, now preparing for winter dormancy. She looked up as we approached, her face brightening. Hey, I didn't know you'd be here today. We could say the same, I replied, sitting beside her. Everything okay? She nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. Just thinking. I come here sometimes when I need perspective. Connor tactfully mentioned wanting to photograph the Japanese maples near the entrance and left us alone, his intuition about sibling moments as sharp as ever. "How's the new job going?" I asked. After canceling her wedding, Vanessa had surprised everyone by accepting a position at a small arts foundation, focusing on community access programs, a far cry from the corporate path our parents had envisioned for her. "It's challenging," she admitted. "The pay is nothing like what I would have made at Parker's family firm. But the work feels real. Like I'm contributing something that matters." I smiled, recognizing the quiet pride in her voice, so different from the polished confidence she'd once projected. "And Mom and Dad?" "Still adjusting," she said with a small laugh. "Dad keeps sending me job listings for more suitable positions. Mom alternates between treating my apartment like a temporary situation and bringing me houseplants as housewarming gifts." "Progress, then." "Slow progress," she agreed. "But real." She turned to face me directly. "What about you? How's married life?" "Wonderful," I said honestly. "Not perfect, we still argue about dishes in the sink and whose turn it is to take out the recycling. But solid." "True." Vanessa nodded, looking out over the gardens again. "I've been thinking a lot about that day, not your wedding, but before. When you stood your ground about the pavilion. You changed everything, Maya. Not just for yourself, but for me too." "How so?" "You showed me there was another way to be. That I didn't have to accept the role I'd been given, that I could define my own value." She picked up a fallen maple leaf, turning it in her fingers. "I'd spent my whole life trying to be exceptional because I thought that's what made me worthy of love. Watching you claim your worth on your own terms, it gave me permission to question everything." Her words touched me deeply. For so long, I'd seen Vanessa as the favored one, the golden child who had everything handed to her. I hadn't recognized how trapped she'd been by those same expectations, how the pedestal our parents had placed her on was just another form of constraint. "I never thought of it that way," I admitted. "That's because you were always braver than me," she said simply. "Quieter, maybe, but braver where it counts." We sat in companionable silence for a moment, the autumn breeze rustling the remaining leaves above us. Finally, Vanessa spoke again. "I've met someone," she said, a hint of color rising in her cheeks. "Nothing serious yet, but different. He's a teacher at the community arts center. No family connections, no impressive pedigree. Just a good person doing work he believes in." "And that appeals to you?" She nodded. "It's like I'm seeing with new eyes now. Valuing different things." She laughed softly. "Mom would say I'm dating beneath my potential. But for the first time, I'm not measuring potential by my parents' standards." I squeezed her hand. "I'm happy for you, Vanessa. Truly. It's strange," she mused. "For years, I thought I was the lucky one, the chosen one. Now I realize you had the freedom all along, to build a life based on your values, not on others' approval." Her insight struck me as profound. I had always seen my position in the family as the lesser one, the overlooked one. I hadn't recognized the strength that had developed in that space, the authenticity that had flourished outside the spotlight. "Maybe we both had different kinds of freedom," I suggested. "And different kinds of constraints." She nodded thoughtfully. "And now we're both finding our way to something more real." Connor rejoined us, his camera hanging around his neck, cheeks flushed from the crisp air. "The maples are spectacular," he reported. "Deep red against the blue sky, perfect contrast." Vanessa stood, brushing leaves from her jeans. "I should get going. I'm meeting friends for dinner in town." She hugged me tightly, then surprised Connor with a hug as well. "Take care of each other," she said simply. As we watched her walk away down the stone path, Connor slipped his arm around my waist. "That looked like a good conversation." "It was," I confirmed. "Different than any we've had before." We continued our walk through the gardens, eventually finding ourselves back at the pavilion. The afternoon sun had shifted, casting long shadows across the glass structure, illuminating it from a different angle than I'd ever seen before. "You know," Connor said thoughtfully, "I've been thinking about what happened with the venue, with your family. About how hard you fought for this place." I leaned against him, breathing in the familiar scent of his jacket. "What about it?" "It wasn't really about the pavilion, was it? It was about being seen. About having your choices respected." I considered his words, recognizing their truth. Yes. It was about claiming space, literal and figurative. About not being erased from my own life. He nodded, his arm tightening around me. "You've inspired me, you know. Watching you stand up for yourself, refuse to be diminished. It's changed how I think about my own boundaries, my own voice." His admission surprised and moved me. In focusing on my own journey, I hadn't fully considered how it might be affecting Connor, how my growth might be creating space for his as well. "Really?" "Really," he confirmed. "That research grant I applied for last month? The one everyone said was a long shot? I wouldn't have done it before. I would have listened to the doubts, played it safe. But seeing you refuse to shrink yourself, it made me braver too. The thought that my journey had rippled outward, affecting not just my family dynamics but also empowering the man I loved, filled me with a deep sense of satisfaction. That's beautiful, I said softly. That's influence, he corrected. Real influence, not the kind your parents and the Prestons talk about, with their connections and social positioning. The kind that comes from living authentically and inspiring others to do the same. As the sun began to set, casting the gardens in golden light, we made our way slowly toward the exit. Mr. Harrison waved to us from the administrative building, and several groundskeepers greeted us by name, small acknowledgments of our belonging in the space. Near the main gate, a young couple stood examining a payment plan brochure, hope and uncertainty mingled on their faces. Something in their expression reminded me of myself 3 years ago, standing in that same spot, calculating monthly payments against my teacher's salary, wondering if such a dream was possible. On impulse, I approached them. The extended payment program is worth it, I said. If this place means something to you. The woman looked up, surprised. You used it? I nodded, gesturing back toward the pavilion gleaming in the distance. For 3 years. Every month. It wasn't always easy, but on my wedding day, standing in that pavilion, knowing I'd earned every inch of it, that was priceless. Her partner smiled, hope strengthening in his eyes. That's encouraging to hear. We've been saving, but it's going to take time. The best things usually do, Connor added, joining the conversation. And Willowcrest honors that commitment. They see the value in perseverance. After exchanging a few more words of encouragement, we continued on our way, leaving the couple poring over the brochure with renewed enthusiasm. That was nice of you, Connor observed as we reached our car. I smiled, looking back at the gardens one last time before we departed. Just passing along what I've learned. That standing your ground isn't selfish, it's necessary. That your dreams deserve defending. That sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to be erased. He kissed me softly before opening my car door. Remind me to have that engraved somewhere in our home. Maybe I will, I laughed. Right next to my framed pavilion deed. As we drove away from Willowcrest, the gardens receding in our rearview mirror, I felt a profound sense of completion. Not because the journey was over, it wasn't, not by far, but because I now understood its true nature. This hadn't just been about a wedding venue. It had been about finding my voice, claiming my space, refusing to accept the diminished role others had assigned me. It had been about recognizing my own worth and insisting that others recognize it too. The certificate Mr. Harrison had given me on my wedding day now hung in our home office, alongside the framed ceremony deed my father had given me. Together, they served as daily reminders, not just of a beautiful wedding day, but of the woman I had become in fighting for it. A woman who knew her worth. A woman who spoke her truth. A woman who stood her ground. And that woman, that authentic, powerful self, was the real gift I had given myself. One that would continue to shape my marriage, my family relationships, my career, and every aspect of my life moving forward. Some people might look at my story and see only a dispute over a wedding venue. But I know the truth, that sometimes, the biggest transformations begin with the smallest stands. That reclaiming your power often starts with simply saying, no, this matters to me. And that, in the end, is what I would tell anyone facing their own version of my story. Your dreams deserve defending. Your voice deserves to be heard. Your space deserves to be claimed. Because when you stand firm in your truth, you don't just change your circumstances. You change yourself. And sometimes, you change everyone around you too. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.